Now that's atmosphere, and this scene is the epitome of it. Maybe they can't explain it, but the best directors can certainly create it. They know how the pitch of an actor's voice mixes with the lighting in a room, how an expression changes as the camera moves forward or backward, how the pace of music supports the dialogue in a slow conversation. They know how each element interacts with the others, combining every prop, every costume, every insignificant piece of information until they become more than a collection of details, but an idea, an experience, an emotion you can only feel while watching this particular scene. So what happens when you try to conjure a unique atmosphere for a story that's already been told? Well, that's the question Robert Eggers had to answer for his rendition of the classic vampire story Nosferatu. Eggers, though, hasn't had much trouble giving his films their own texture, separating them from everything else. From The Witch, to The Lighthouse, to The Northman, Eggers and his cinematographer Jaron Blaschke have repeatedly targeted a gloomy, melancholy tone, further mastering their craft with each successive film, culminating in one of the most visually impressive modern horror movies. The meticulous composition and lighting in nearly every shot of Nosferatu conjures comparisons to classical paintings. I mean, just look at them. Instead of simply crafting beautiful static images though, Eggers directs these scenes with potent efficiency, building upon each detail by either moving the camera or the actors, carefully manipulating the viewer's attention to elicit the reactions he desires.
You just take a simple shot and you move the action within a frame, which I find a little more interesting.
He doesn't just cut from one character to the next, he allows the elements on the screen to dictate the focus. You see, at any given moment, our eyes naturally follow the subject, the speaker. As one character talks to another, Eggers tends to present them together instead of cutting back and forth between them, allowing us to see how the actors interact with each other, our attention moving from one speaker to the next. Eggers' shots in Nosferatu carry on much longer than in most modern films, but they don't feel slow because of his preparation, how he constantly reframes his scenes without cutting, perhaps going from a close-up to a medium to a wide and then to another close-up, all in one shot.
Just really distilling things down to less cuts, and then there's like less cuts. I find an inherent rise in tension, as the cut is not coming, so it's, that's kind of cool. And then every cut, it's like kind of jumps, you're starting over a bit.
Eggers and Blaschke maximize their shots, limiting how often the audience needs to adjust to new images. Many times, each individual shot feels like its own scene, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, telling its own story inside the larger one. With its composition, you can often look at a single frame and understand the dynamics between characters, like in this one, where you can tell whose perspective matters the most not only through her proximity to the camera, but also her level of focus compared to the other characters. Despite being further away, the man still seems to have direct influence in this moment, as he faces the woman in the front and still takes up a large portion of the screen. You can also tell that the woman to the left has the least significance right now, with her appearing the smallest and even turning away from the others. Their blocking, their positioning on screen, gives each character their own space, allowing us to clearly see each one. We also get this shot, where the size of the two men closest to the camera makes it clear that we should pay attention to their conversation. Conveniently, they stand just far enough apart that we can see past them to the man between them, who also seems concerned about their topic of conversation, appearing physically tired, burdened by it. His smaller size and blurrier focus, though, visualizes his lesser importance, at least at this moment. We also get this shot, where I think you get it. This intentionality and precision in the image persists throughout the film, but especially during its most intense sequence, the one I alluded to at the beginning, the introduction of Count Orlok. Before fully revealing such a mysterious character, the film first builds up to it, introducing the audience to the world's more supernatural elements. On his way to meet the Count for the first time, a man named Thomas Hutter finds himself at a crossroads, Eggers presenting the scene with very direct angles. Instead of tilting or turning, the camera records from a straight-on perspective, creating images like those in a storybook.
It's like an illustration, this is very much a storybook movie, I think.
So now, Eggers has the art, the cold, wintry blue in each frame. But he still needs to move forward, to transform those images into a sequence that evokes some kind of lasting emotion or reaction. In this case, suspense. Eggers, though, doesn't rely on dialogue or music to raise the tension in a scene. Sometimes the uncertainty, the unknown danger of unfamiliar images works even better, so we cut back and forth between shots of Thomas himself and of his point of view, each time pulling closer, the sounds growing louder, the intensity rising until... We return to Thomas's face, but instead of simply cutting back to the carriage, the camera slowly pans to it, revealing a much different scene than we expected. The panning allows our minds to wander, to question what Thomas sees, until the moment we share his perspective. Now showing the riderless carriage, we descend even deeper into this ethereal atmosphere. After the door opens on its own, Thomas doesn't simply walk, but glides towards the carriage until he completely obscures the screen, fluidly transitioning to a wide shot of Orlok's castle. The film continues with this dreamlike aura as we look at Thomas inside the carriage, but only long enough for the music to exacerbate his distress, the volume rising as the camera slowly moves closer until it finally lifts upwards through the darkness and towards an even closer look at the castle, only for the camera to again seek the shadows, propelling furiously into the doors and flooding the screen with black. After we fade back in, though, we look down at Thomas still inside the carriage, and then tilt up straight into an extreme close-up of his face. However, when he turns, instead of seeing the carriage, we see the doors to the castle, the camera having traveled through the shadows to remove the surrounding environment, disorienting both Thomas and the viewer as it reinforces the dreary, ethereal atmosphere the scene has been building.
So Nick is standing, actually, with
coat draped over them.
And then there's the carriage behind him. And as the camera's right here, the carriage comes apart and his legs are pulled out so that then the castle doors are behind him.
The transitions through black and this whole Ferris wheel, shot structure of, tilting up and tilting up and tilting up, and then emerging, at the base of the castle. That was kind of fun to design.
Like many others in the film, this shot makes use of depth, having Thomas walk towards the doors and away from the camera, him shrinking with each step as the doors remain the same size. The lack of light obscures their distance, making Thomas's journey forward seem longer. He just keeps walking, until the doors tower over him by more than what seemed possible at first. Before Thomas can knock on the door, however, it seems to open on its own, slowly revealing the man of the hour, but only vaguely, keeping his appearance distant and hidden not only for atmospheric reasons, but practical ones as well.
Bill Skarsgård is very much a vampire of folklore, and these early folk vampires looked like putrid walking corpses. And if you were a putrid corpse, you wouldn't want your house guests to know that you were that.
I try not to let them know.
So Orlok's always kept at a distance to kind of conceal his identity.
Alongside Orlok's obscured appearance, the continued lack of dialogue raises the mystery even further, as Orlok withholds any explanation, not even returning a greeting to Thomas's bow. He just disrespectfully turns away. Now, Eggers makes an effort to continue the dream state that's been present throughout the scene, so he transitions from one shot to the next as fluidly as possible, this time plunging us back into darkness as the doors close behind Thomas, allowing time to seamlessly jump forward, with Orlok revealing his supernatural control as he speaks his first words with his slow, gravelly voice before the new setting even comes into view.
You are late.
We don't know what's happening or where we are, but Orlok does. Finally, the new setting fades in, but we don't move as expected. As Thomas follows Orlok up the spiral staircase, the camera floats alongside them, maintaining that cold blue that's been present throughout the scene, until Thomas reaches the top and discovers the contrasting warmth of bright flame. Orlok, though, has disappeared, escaping the viewer's vision not through a cut, but through Eggers' clever preparation of the actor's movements in relation to the camera, knowing just where to place Orlok to keep him off screen. His lack of information now leaving him confused, like where'd Orlok go, the camera abandons Thomas, exploring the area forward, establishing a new tone with the warmer lighting. Still refusing to cut, Thomas interrupts the shot and enters the frame from behind the camera, allowing it to follow him as he moves to the right, his large silhouette in the foreground leaving room for Orlok to quietly reveal his presence in the background. The camera even continues moving past Thomas to settle on a nice wide composition of Orlok as the shot finally finishes, capping off a carefully planned and executed sequence of visuals that transition from cold to hot. from mystery to conversation.
Set out the deed and sit.
It's fun to have the camera say, fuck you, I'm the boss, you know, and kind of run things, you know, when you're under the spell of this force that has complete power over you. A lot of times, like, what the camera's doing is not that unusual or unexpected, but it's like the little things, like the timing of it. If you want a wide shot, you move the actor into a wide shot, like I said before. You know, you don't just go to a wide. It's like, well, how do we make this more interesting? How do we make a wide out of the existing 2 shots?
However, the end of this shot still doesn't clearly show Orlok's face, keeping his appearance hidden by distance and shadow. When we cut to Thomas, we see from beside Orlok, allowing Thomas to again make use of depth as he now walks towards the camera, going from small, scared, and isolated to large but still apprehensive, his new size providing a more detailed view of his emotion. Throughout this movement though, Orlok remains concealed just off screen, giving Thomas a clear view of the monster, but not us.
Him always being in the shadows and not, for Thomas, not fully being able to understand what he's gotten into and still having some sort of doubt.
Even as Orlok's hand comes into frame, he stays largely out of sight, and as the shot remains unbroken, Thomas repositions himself into a close-up, allowing us to see his fear with even greater detail, while Orlok fills the space Thomas just left, keeping the source of Thomas's fear in the same frame, illustrating very directly each character's relationship to the other. Throughout the film, Eggers treats the edge of the frame as a sort of portal, recognizing that we can't see beyond it, allowing various people and props to pop in unexpectedly. In this scene, as Orlok moves to the left, the camera moves to the right, showing Orlok vanish on one side only to spontaneously appear on the other. It doesn't stop there though. Still without cutting to a new shot, the camera moves into a medium, then follows Thomas's eyes as Orlok leaves the frame, somehow settling on the vampire now sitting down, again visualizing the speed of his movement and the ghastliness of his presence. This careful positioning also creates a visual contrast between Thomas and Orlok, having one in light as the other sits in darkness, giving us access to the emotions of one but not the other. Even with him now facing the camera, Eggers still manages to conceal Orlok's appearance by placing the room's dominant source of light directly behind him, his own body keeping himself in shadow. You see, Blasky tries to limit his sources of light, using a single strong one if possible, in this case, a fire.
I'm creative, but in lighting, I tend to be a little bit literal. If there's a fire in the room, I'm just going to choose where the fire is going to be and then embellish it, but it's still from the same direction. Everything's motivated from that direction, so you're still believing it's real fire. There's no electric light in the Great Hall. It's all that fire. If I want some more, I'll put some mirrors and I'll multiply the source.
So, in one shot, Eggers goes from a wide to a medium to a close-up, and then pulls back to a medium, and then pans to another medium, achieving these different types of shots both through the movement of the camera and through the movement of the actors. All this only works though due to meticulous planning and coordination, knowing where actors are and where they will be. Instead of his camera wasting precious seconds searching for subjects, they always seem to be in the right place, perfectly framed in front of the camera. You see, Eggers understands the effects he wants to cause, which not only builds the tension he so clearly aims for, but also creates these beautiful images over and over without them feeling separate from the story. The scene's intensity now having dropped a bit, with Orlok sitting down, the film turns to simpler camera movements, that is, not moving at all, but instead cutting back and forth between the static shots of Thomas and Orlok in their respective positions as they make conversation. However, the implicit danger of Orlok persists, each word from Thomas potentially ending his life.
Ritual.
Speak not of it again!
The tension now spiking again, we return to a close-up of Thomas, magnifying his expression, his fear. Maintaining that energy, the camera descends, redirecting us from Thomas's face to his hands, connecting his emotion to his action, which results in the most dangerous thing to do around a vampire.
Take heed what you do.
Even without an obvious sound cue, the scene has clearly become more intense, visualized by the immediate extreme close-up of Orlok's eyes, still withholding his full appearance but revealing his curiosities, that Thomas's blood attracts him.
Come by the fire. Your face shows you won well.
Orlok calls him closer, a request that certainly doesn't diminish the intensity, so when we cut back to Thomas, we match his emotion with a close-up, one that appears to skip time as Thomas's clothes now look different, his jacket suddenly gone. At the same time, the low ambient sounds increase, and Thomas turns to the right, revealing how drastically his position has changed, with him now just a few feet from the fireplace. Turning back to his old position, he sees Orlok, who, despite now facing the fire, is still largely obscured in shadow, but is slowly, sinisterly, walking towards Thomas. The tension now at its highest, the music that had been simmering, blending in with various growls and groans, intensifies, pairing with the scene's final shot, the camera pushing in as Thomas sits next to the fireplace, petrified of the monster, moving towards him.